The observer effect is one of the most misunderstood ideas on the internet. You've probably heard some version of this. Quantum physics proves consciousness creates reality. Or maybe, because of the observer effect, your thoughts manifest outcomes. It sounds powerful, it sounds intelligent, and because it sounds scientific, people repeat it with confidence. But here's the problem. That's not what the observer effect actually says, and once this idea gets misunderstood, everything built on top of it starts to wobble. People begin to believe that their life is controlled mainly by thoughts, so they focus on affirmations, mental images, and trying to think right, while ignoring the part that is actually shaping their day-to-day results. So today, we're going to do something simple. We're going to take one of the most overused concepts in spiritual content and make it clear. We'll talk about what the observer effect really means, what the internet gets wrong, and what the useful lesson actually is for real life. Because on this channel, Vibrational State, we're not interested in mystical shortcuts. We're interested in understanding how your inner state changes the way you interact with reality, and that interaction changes outcomes. Before we go deeper, if you want grounded videos on vibration, emotional frequency, coherence, and the inner field, subscribe now. Each episode builds on the last, and this series is designed to help you understand what actually changes results. Now let's begin with the simple version. In physics, the observer effect means the act of measuring a system can affect the system being measured. That's it. When scientists observe very small particles, the measuring device interacts with what is being observed. That interaction changes the outcome. Now notice something important. In physics, the observer is usually not a human mind. It's a detector, a measuring instrument, a physical interaction. So the observer effect is not saying, your thoughts directly create reality. It's saying something more precise. Interaction changes systems. And that is where the real value of this idea begins. Because even though the observer effect is a physics concept, the deeper principle shows up everywhere in ordinary life. The way you observe something changes the way you relate to it, and the way you relate to it changes what happens next. That's where this becomes useful. Not as magic, as a feedback loop. And once you understand that, you stop asking, how do I think the right thought? And start asking, what am I training myself to notice, reinforce, and repeat? That is a much more powerful question, because what you repeatedly notice changes how you behave. And behavior compounds. That's the bridge between the observer effect and emotional frequency. Not mystical control. Pattern formation. And this is exactly why this topic matters so much, because many people are not being held back by lack of desire. They are being held back by where their attention goes all day, and attention is never neutral. It either reinforces scarcity, or it reinforces clarity. It either trains your system to scan for danger, or it trains your system to recognize opportunity. So the observer effect, used correctly, is not about your mind commanding reality. It's about the fact that the way you engage with something can change the outcome. And that principle is much more useful than fantasy. Real-life examples. Plus, internet myth versus grounded truth. Let's make this real. Imagine someone who decides to track their spending for the first time. Before tracking it, money feels chaotic. They open their bank app and feel confused. They wonder why there is never enough left, but then they start writing down every expense: coffee, delivery, subscriptions, random online purchases, and something changes. Not because money itself changed, but because observation changed behavior. Now they think before spending. Now patterns become visible. Now the system becomes readable. That is a version of the observer effect in everyday life. Not because consciousness collapsed reality, but because paying attention created feedback, and feedback changed action. Now think about health. Someone starts wearing a smartwatch that tracks sleep and movement. At first they only wanted information, but after a week they start going to bed earlier. They walk more. They change small choices throughout the day. Again, not because the watch emitted magic, because observation created awareness, and awareness changed behavior. Now think about content creation. This one matters because it applies directly to channels, businesses, and personal growth. Two creators launch a channel. One of them checks analytics constantly. Every small dip feels like failure. Every flat day feels like danger. Every new video becomes emotionally loaded. They start changing format too fast. They overreact. They second guess. They never give anything enough time to compound. The second creator checks analytics less often, not because they don't care, but because they understand that constant checking creates emotional instability. So instead of obsessing over every fluctuation, they focus on one question: how can the next video be clearer, stronger, and more useful? A year later, the results are very different. Same platform, same possibility, different observer. And that difference matters because attention shapes emotional state, and emotional state shapes behavior. Now this is where the internet goes wrong. The internet hears, observation changes outcomes, and turns it into, your mind controls reality. But the grounded version is much more useful. What you repeatedly observe changes what you repeatedly do. That's the real mechanism, and it explains a lot of what people call vibration. Because when your emotional frequency is urgency, your attention scans for problems, rejection, lack, failure, comparison. But when your emotional frequency is steadiness, your attention starts scanning for patterns, timing, next steps, opportunities, clarity. Same environment, different observer, different outcome. That's why attention matters. Now here's an important distinction. Attention is not the same as intention. Intention is what you want. Attention is what you feed. And a lot of people confuse the two. They intend abundance, but feed scarcity. They intend confidence, but feed comparison. They intend peace, but feed chaos. And then they wonder why their external life feels misaligned. Your nervous system responds less to what you say you want and more to what you repeat. That's why emotional frequency matters more than motivational language. Because emotional frequency is built through repetition, and repetition becomes baseline. So if your daily pattern is doom scrolling, numbers checking, catastrophizing, rehearsing rejection, watching what others have, you are training your system to observe life through scarcity. That scarcity then shapes behavior, and behavior shapes outcomes. That is the real observer effect of everyday life. Emotional frequency, plus mixed signals, plus why this affects prosperity. Now let's connect this directly to vibration and emotional frequency. When people hear the word vibration, they often imagine something mystical. But the grounded version is much simpler. Your vibration is the state you repeatedly return to. That's it. And your emotional frequency is the emotional baseline that shapes how you interpret life. So, if your baseline is urgency, you don't just feel urgency. You observe life through urgency. You interpret delay as danger. You interpret silence as rejection. You interpret uncertainty as a problem that must be fixed immediately. And that creates very predictable behavior. Overthinking, over-explaining, chasing, controlling, quitting, restarting, making short-term decisions just to feel relief. Now imagine a different baseline. Steadiness. Not perfect happiness. Not constant positivity. Steadiness. Suddenly your attention changes. You can tolerate a delay without panic. You can hear "not now" without collapsing. You can improve something without turning it into a personal crisis. You can wait long enough for patterns to reveal themselves. This is why emotional frequency is so important. It doesn't just change how you feel. It changes how you observe. And how you observe changes how you behave. Now let's talk about mixed signals, because this is where prosperity often gets blocked. A mixed signal is when your words say one thing, but your state says another. You say, "I trust life," but your body is constantly braced. You say, "I'm ready for money," but you avoid your bank app, undercharge, or panic when someone says no. You say, "I'm aligned," but your attention is scattered across 10 fears at once, that is not alignment. That is conflict. And conflict creates unstable behavior. The reason this matters for prosperity is simple. Prosperity requires consistency, not intensity, not emotional highs. Consistency. It requires stable attention, clear decisions, patient timing, follow-through, the ability to tolerate uncertainty. And those things are very hard to sustain if your emotional frequency is chaos. This is why some people work hard and still stay stuck, because their attention is constantly feeding the wrong patterns. They are observing life through fear, and fear changes the whole system. Now, this is not a guided exercise video, but Vibrational State will always mention tools because coherence is trainable. A few grounded tools that support this. Tool 1. Reduce attention leakage. Stop feeding chaos all day. Tool 2. Shorten the loop between observation and correction. Notice a pattern faster. Adjust sooner. Tool 3. Ask better questions. Instead of, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "What pattern am I reinforcing?" Tool 4. Track patterns, not moods. Moods change quickly. Patterns reveal the real signal. Tool 5. Build steadiness before intensity. A calm system compounds better than a dramatic one. Now, here's the final insight. The observer effect is not proof that your thoughts magically create reality, but it is proof that interaction changes outcomes. And in daily life, one of your most powerful interactions is attention. What you repeatedly observe trains what you repeatedly become. That is why emotional frequency matters, not as superstition, as pattern, and patterns compound. So let's bring all of this together clearly. The observer effect in physics does not mean your mind can instantly shape the universe any way you want. That is the internet version. The grounded version is better. The grounded version says, interaction matters, measurement matters, conditions matter, and in real life, the condition you carry into reality every day is your inner state. Your inner state shapes your attention. Your attention shapes your interpretation. Your interpretation shapes your decisions. Your decisions shape your behavior, and behavior compounds into results. That is the real chain. Now think about what this means for daily life. If every morning your attention is trained on fear, urgency, and comparison, your nervous system will build a scarcity lens. You'll see life through lack. You'll react instead of respond. You'll chase instead of build. But if your attention is trained towards steadiness, clarity, and pattern recognition, your emotional frequency begins to change. And when emotional frequency changes, the whole system changes. Your timing, your patience, your choices, your communication, your trust in your own next step. That's why this matters. Because prosperity is not built in one giant moment. It's built through repeated interactions with life, repeated decisions, repeated patterns, repeated attention, repeated regulation. And over time, those repetitions become identity. So instead of asking, "Can my thoughts collapse reality?" ask, "What am I repeatedly teaching myself to see?" Because that question is actionable. That question is honest. And that question actually changes outcomes. Now, here's the practical takeaway from this episode. If you want a different result, don't start with fantasy. Start with observation. Observe what your attention feeds all day. Observe what emotional state you return to. Observe which patterns repeat in your choices, not to judge yourself, to make the system visible. Because once the system becomes visible, it becomes changeable. And that is where real power begins. Not in vague mysticism, not in overcomplicated physics language, in clean observation. That's the real gift hidden inside the observer effect. Not your mind controls everything, but what you repeatedly observe shapes what you repeatedly reinforce, and what you reinforce becomes your life. In the next episode, we're going deeper into another huge misunderstanding, the difference between quantum energy and emotional energy, and why confusing those two ideas keeps so many people stuck. If you want to keep building this path step by step, subscribe. Welcome to Vibrational State.